안녕하세요. 혜주입니다. 네, 꽃길만 걷자. 좋고 행복한 일만 생기기를 바라며 건네는 응원의 말인데요. 사실 꽃길만 걷는 건 불가능하죠. 때때로 가시밭길도 걸어야 하는 게 우리의 인생입니다. 그럼 가시밭길에 들어섰을 때 우리는 어떻게 해야 할까요? 오늘 그 답을 얻을 수 있을 겁니다. 세계인의 영적 스승이며 불교 수행자이신 툭텐 초드론 스님 모셨습니다. 안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. Hello, Venerable Chodron.
Hello.
So thank you for coming to BTN, and it's very nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So I'd like to run through some questions with you.
Sure.
So the people of Korea have been introduced to your teaching through your books and public talks. And it's an honor to have you here at BTN studio. And I understand you came to Korea for the 한마음 선언 seminar. And also you visited Tongdosa and Seokguram Grotto, two important Buddhist sites.
Yeah.
And what was your impression of Korean Buddhist monasteries?
The monasteries I saw were quite large, quite beautiful, and I could see the fact that there were so many monasteries and they were so beautiful, and the altar and the offerings to the Buddha. I could see through that people in Korea have a lot of faith in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and they express it through that generosity, which is really wonderful, you know, to see people who take refuge in the three jewels.
Yes. And after Shakyamuni Buddha, Buddhism spread far and wide across the globe. Within each trajectory, it was infused with various cultures to form Buddhist tradition, different kind of Buddhist tradition. And please share with us how you came to encounter Buddhism and what inspired you to be ordained in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition.
Okay.
And your path to becoming an ordained nun.
Oh, that's
a big
going
question.
to be a very long answer. As a child, I always had questions about what's the meaning of life, what's the purpose of my life. When I die and look back, what value was it, you know? Because I had some feeling that it wasn't just going about having pleasure, because the pleasure is always transitory, and when you die, it's gone. But I couldn't find the answers to those kind of questions from the religions that were available to me in the West. So one summer vacation, I was working as a teacher during the year, and in summer vacation I had time off, and I saw a poster for a meditation course led by two Tibetan lamas. So I thought, well, let's go. I knew nothing about Buddhism, absolutely nothing. But I thought, let's go. So this course was taught by Lama Thupten Yeshe and Zopa Rinpoche, and one of the first things they said in the course was, you don't need to believe everything we say. And for me, that just opened the door, because I didn't want to hear people telling me what I had to believe or else, you know, or the truth, what they thought was the truth. So the approach to Buddhism about think about things, investigate them, try out the meditation, see if it helps you. So this process of being able to try it and test it out and then make our own decisions, that really appealed to me.
Oh, yeah.
So after the retreat, this was in 1975, there were very few Buddhist teachers in the US at that time. So I quit my job. I went to Nepal, where the two lamas had a monastery, and I started studying Buddhism there. And I knew fairly quickly that I wanted to ordain, which is very surprising, because if you had known me before I encountered Buddhism and said to me, oh, you will be a celibate nun, I would have said, no, that is not my life. But the Dharma really touched me in my heart. In the idea of rebirth and karma made so much sense. The meditations on how to deal with anger, how to overcome self-centeredness, all of these things, when I practice them, they really help me become a better human being. So I could have continued practicing as a lay person, but I knew for my own personality, I had a lot of attachment. And if I had tried to practice as a lay person, I don't think I could have done a very good job, because the mind is always looking out for something interesting, something pleasurable. Yes. So I knew I wanted to make a really strong commitment to the practice. And also I knew that I had to stop having a double standard about ethical conduct, because before I thought, oh, when politicians and corporations, when those people lie, very bad. But when I lie, it's okay. It's to not hurt other people's feelings or something like that. So I had two different standards, and I realized that wasn't going to work. So, you know, to make a real sincere commitment to practice, then I requested my teacher for ordination.
And your teacher just
it was Lama Thupten Nyashe at that time, and he said yes, but he said wait a while. He wanted me to wait because I had to go back to America, discuss with my parents and straighten out affairs, and then come back to Asia.
So he gave you some time to think one more time.
Yeah, it was actually quite wise of him to do that. From my side, I wanted to get ordained right away. But, you know, and they say, listen to your teacher, so I listened, and in the end I saw it was very good what he had told me to do.
Oh, that was beautiful, And it's reported that there has been growing interest in Buddhism in both the United States and Europe. So please explain to us the phenomenon of Jewish Buddhists, also known as Jubus, and its significance.
Okay. So yes, it's true. Buddhism is growing in Europe and Australia and the Americas, and both North and South America. The phenomena of the Jubu, I grew up as Jewish.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and Judaism is a minority religion, you know, in the West. But I was very attracted to Buddhism, and looking back on it, there were certain elements in Judaism that I think I saw exemplified also in Buddhism. For example, in Judaism, the rabbis have many debates over what doctrine is. Well, I ordained in the Tibetan tradition, and as you may know, there's many debates that go on there. So, you know, both traditions, there's room for discussion, investigation. In Judaism, there's little, what they're called mitzvahs, little things that you say to transform daily actions into a blessing, you know, for God. In Buddhism, we have the gathas, and in Tibetan Buddhism especially, we have the mind training teachings, which are so fantastic to really help us look at our daily life and our emotions and our actions from a Buddhist viewpoint and transform them into the path to awakening. Okay, so for example, somebody criticizes me. Usually, what do you do when you're criticized? You can't talk to me like that. But the thought training teaching says, oh, this is an opportunity to look at your own mind. And then there's many thought training methods to use to overcome the anger or prevent it from arising. So, for example, if somebody criticizes me, instead of instantly getting angry and defensive, I think, oh, I have, in either earlier this life or in previous lives, I've criticized other people. So why am I so surprised when other people criticize me?
Yeah.
I created that karma of criticism. It's ripening now on me. So it's nothing to get angry at the other person about. I'm the creator of it. Yeah. And then, there's other techniques like seeing the person who criticizes you as somebody who's suffering, who's a suffering sentient being, who's trapped in samsara. How can you get mad at somebody who's trapped in samsara by their afflictions? That person is actually an object of compassion, not of anger.
Yes.
Yeah. So these kind of ways of transforming things, when you clean something, you think that you are, taking away all the defilements from sentient beings' minds. So these kinds of things are very similar to that part of Judaism.
I see.
Yeah.
So are there many Jewish people who show their interest in Buddhism?
Yes, and it's really interesting how many young Jews there are who are interested in Buddhism. Yeah.
Interesting.
And in 1990, there was a delegation, maybe about 15, 20 Jews who came to Dharamsala to interact with the Tibetan community and to speak with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And because one of their questions was, Judaism is a minority community. How are they going to hold their culture together when they're in diaspora? And because that's the same situation as the Tibetans are in. So His Holiness talked to them about that. And His Holiness also advised them to teach more of their esoteric teachings to the young people.
And it's related questions. So I will ask another question about the Jewish Buddhists. So you are actively engaged in interfaith dialogue and were involved in bringing the Jewish delegation to His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Dharamshala. So you also published Interfaith Insight, which includes various essays about interreligious contact. So could you please share with us why you are actively engaged in interfaith dialogue and the impact of this dialogue on your Buddhist practices?
Okay, I feel interfaith dialogue is very important because religion in society has a strong impact. And it's very important that religious leaders respect each other and respect others' traditions because so many wars have been fought over religion. I was a history major at university, and one thing that really struck in my mind was every generation in Europe, people were killing each other in the name of God. And that made me think as a young person, before I met Buddhism, religion is useless. It just causes people to kill each other.
Yeah.
And if you look in the world, that is what happens many times. So it's very important that the leaders come together in harmony and in respect and show that example to the followers. Yeah, and that the leaders speak and they talk not only about the similarities in the different faiths, because everybody talks about love and compassion, forgiveness, these kinds of things, ethical conduct, generosity. So to point out the universal values of all religions, but also to see that there's differences, but differences don't mean we have to argue.
Yes.
And I remember one thing with His Holiness and one of the Catholic fathers that he dialogues a lot with. And the Catholic father said, well, Buddhism and Catholicism come to the same point. And His Holiness said, I don't know. Yeah, and we don't have to say that they come to the same point in order to be harmonious.
Oh,
And that is a very important point, that we don't need to say we're exactly the same in order to get along.
Right.
We can say that there are differences and respect those differences, and we can still get along, you know. And this is another thing that really impressed me about Buddhism, because unlike other faiths that says everybody should be our faith, and if you aren't, you go to hell, you know, after death. Buddhism doesn't say anything about that. And Buddhism is very open-minded and says that there are many different faiths because people have many different dispositions and interests. And so what is important is that everybody find a faith tradition and a philosophy that makes sense to them and helps them become a better person. So if the belief in God makes you do that, and it makes you keep ethical conduct and be a kind person, that's good. Buddhism doesn't believe in a creator God, but we have all sorts of other things that are emphasizing us to have ethical conduct and, you know, be more loving and compassionate. So that's good. Yeah. So we don't have to say that the theology and the philosophy is exactly the same in order to respect the fact that people are different and they need different things.
Okay, thank you for your answers. And although today's society seems to have entered the post-religious era, in fact, the effort of many Buddhist teachers, including yourself, have raised interest in Buddhism in the West. And are there many practitioners who wish to be ordained as a bhikkhuni?
Good question. In the West, in general, many people are interested in Buddhism, yeah, but they don't necessarily want to ordain because in the West, you know, like in South Korea, the society is very prosperous, so there's so many things to get, and attachment takes us away here and there, so much entertainment, and then, of course, the draw of family life, having a spouse, having children, and so on. So not so many people want to ordain. However, I feel that the monastic sangha, the people who want to ordain, are a very special group, and they need to be nurtured in a special way, because historically, it's been the role of the Sangha to pass Buddhism down to the next generation. And we can do that by living in a community, whereas a lay teacher, it's more difficult, yeah? If somebody in society has problems, they can go to a monastery, speak to a monastic, get spiritual counseling. But with lay teachers, you can't go over to their house, ring the doorbell, their spouse answers, and they have 3 kids, and say, you know, I want to talk to your spouse about a problem. You can't do that.
No way.
Yeah. So I think monastics are important and can offer a special service to society. Also, when people come to the monastery, they see that here's a group of people who don't have a lot of possessions. You know, most of our possessions belong to the monastery itself. they're used for our Dharma practice. But personally, you know, we don't have our own cars. In our tradition, we don't wear watches. You know, we don't even have our own personal cell phones. Yeah, so that's real renunciation, not to have your own smartphone.
Yeah.
But it makes people think, oh, here are these people, and they're happy, even though they wear the same clothes every day, they shave their head, they don't put on makeup and perfume, you know, they chant and meditate, and they don't have all the stuff that I have, but they're happy. How is that? And I think that's an important question that the Sangha, by our very existence, asks society. Do we really need to consume so much? Do we need to use more than our own fair share of the world's resources? Yeah. So that's a very important question for society.
Yes, yes.
So in some way, I think the monastic, as a community, we act as the conscience of society. Yeah. In America, as you know, America is always having one war or another, sending troops one place or another. You know, in the monastery, we control anger. Yeah. And we try to subdue our anger. We are not in favor of war. War is the most stupid way of solving conflicts, because it doesn't solve any conflicts at all for people to kill each other and destroy each other's land. It has no sense at all. So the monastic community, you know, harmony is very important in that. So if we can, again, show that example and show that there is a way to train the mind to subdue anger, to subdue greed, it poses that, again, that question to society of why are you sending troops? Why are we fighting and killing other living beings? So again, acting as that kind of conscience, which I think is very important, especially in this day and age.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And specifically for a woman today, what value does monasticism hold?
So societies are changing very much now, and people are finally beginning to realize that women are half of the population. We are intelligent. We have something to contribute to the world.
Yes.
We have abilities. You know, we can be independent and think for ourselves. And, you know, having bhikshunis and the example of ordained women show that, you know, we can organize ourselves, we can run our own temple, we can teach, we can understand Buddhist philosophy and share it with others, we can counsel, we can do anything that the men do.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And we often present it, maybe sometimes in a different way, a different style, and that people are attracted to. Yeah? And so I think, especially by having women who are fully ordained, then it shows that example to society so that the women can really contribute. And it also shows society that Buddhism is in touch with the developments of society. In other words, Buddhism, we are not staying with the mentality of many centuries ago, where women's role was to have babies, cook, and clean. It's showing that Buddhism, no, we are up to date with the world in seeing women's potential and giving us the space to use that to benefit other sentient beings.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. And you have several teachers in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, including His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And could you tell us who gave you your Dharma name and explain its meaning?
Okay. So my Dharma name is Thupten Chodron.
Thupten Chodron.
And that was given to me at the time of my shamanary ordination by Kyabje Ling Rinpoche, who is the senior tutor of the Dalai Lama, the previous Kyabje Ling Rinpoche. And so Thupten is kind of like everybody he ordains has that name. So Thupten means the doctrine of the Buddha, yeah, and then Chodron is the personal name, and that means light of the Dharma.
Light of the Dharma.
The Dharma, or lamp of the Dharma.
Oh, I see. So you are brightening with your Dharma.
It gives me something to live up to.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. And you have co-written the multi-volume series, The Library of Wisdom and Compassion, with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Please share with us how you came to start this project and the ultimate purpose of this series.
Okay. So as one of people in the first generation of Westerners who came to encounter Tibetan Buddhism and ordain, I was taught in the very traditional way from the Tibetan translations of Indian texts and the sutras, and also from texts that the Tibetan sages wrote. And the way of explaining some things is different according to the culture. The stories that the masters give to illustrate different points are very different in India and Tibet than what we would use in the West. And also, Westerners have particular questions that, interestingly, were not asked in previous generations. And we tend to challenge things, yeah. And if somebody says something we don't understand, we say, but what about this and what about that? We debate with our teachers, okay? So in watching this over the years and seeing sometimes the difficulties because of the culture, you know, Buddhism coming into a new culture, there were different difficulties, different questions, different, points of clarification. So I went to His Holiness one day because I had the idea that it would be very nice if His Holiness, who is very open and broad-minded, could, and in touch with the West and the modern world, if he could write a very brief text, about Buddhism, that then the other Tibetan masters who were teaching Westerners could use as a root text, because, for example, in the West, nobody knew about rebirth, nobody knows about karma. In the traditional text, it assumes that you understand rebirth, you believe in karma, you know what the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are.
Yeah.
And the West people, who's the Buddha? What's the Dharma? What's the Sangha? We don't even know those things. So there needed a different way of presenting the teachings, giving this kind of background for people in the West that they need. So I went to His Holiness in 1993 or 94, a long time ago, to ask that he please request him to write a short text that then people could use as a root text.
Great.
And he turned around and said to me, oh yes, good idea, but first we should write the commentary on it. And he gave me a transcript of one of his teachings, and he sent me off to write. And then every few years I would go back, and I collected a lot of questions that the Westerners had.
That's great.
And the points that were difficult for us to understand. And then His Holiness I was able to ask those questions directly, and then he could respond and explain the answers. So it was incredibly clarifying. So the point of that series of books is to help people who did not grow up as Tibetan Buddhists. So also for Koreans, Japanese, Chinese, everybody, not just Westerners, because you know, people who aren't familiar with Tibetan culture. And then in the process of writing the book, His Holiness said, well, I want this book to be unique, and I wanted also to have material about the other Buddhist traditions. So, you know, put something in about the Pali tradition, put something in about Chinese Buddhism. I could have done a Korean, Japanese, every Buddhism in every country, but that would have been impossible, you know. So, so he really wanted the voice of other traditions. So I had the opportunity to go to Thailand and study a little bit there. I have many friends in the Chinese Mahayana tradition, and I was ordained in Taiwan. My Bhikshuni ordination was there. And so, you know, gathering things there and then putting that all together. So it's meant as a more, for this particular audience. And also, interestingly, His Holiness said, for young Tibetans. Because young Tibetans, you know, before 1959, if you wanted an education, it was a monastic education in the monastery. Now the young Tibetans are going to secular schools. So they have many of the same questions that we do.
I see.
Yeah, like, who is Manjushri? You know, why do we do a prayer to Manjushri? What does it mean? Yeah. Because the old way of explaining that doesn't work for these kids. So it was to really present Buddhism in this way to help people who need that kind of background. And also because the philosophical texts written in Sanskrit, translated into Tibetan, are very difficult to understand. Yeah, and I thought there has to be a way to explain some of these more profound ideas, especially about emptiness and the nature of reality, but in simple language. So that's also part of the purpose of the Library of Wisdom and Compassion.
I see. So that's why it's called library.
Yeah.
I see.
Because it's many volumes. Yeah, it's going to be at least 10 volumes when it's done.
At least 10 volumes.
Yeah.
Okay. So related to the previous question, we have some issues about the aging of the Buddhists. So within the Korean Buddhist community, there are concerns regarding the aging of our members. So since most Buddhists are elderly, we need to put more effort into propagation among the younger generation, as you talked about the Tibetan young people. So what is it like for the Buddhist community in the United States and 쉬라바스티 Abbey?
Okay.
And are many young people interested in Buddhism there?
Well, some of the Dharma centers may have classes for children. At the Abbey, we don't have classes for children, but every year we have a course for young adults. And in fact, we just finished it the day that I was flying to come to Korea. Yeah, or the day before. So, yes, I think young people are ready for the Dharma. It has to be taught in a certain way. Yeah, it can't be formal, with the master being very formal and speaking like this and, you know, following the text. You have to relate it to their lives. And when it's related to their lives, then they listen. Yeah, and you have to use contemporary language not some of the old language to relate to people. But I find, you know, when we do this, and also in addition to teachings, we have discussion groups. And at the Abbey, we have a very special way of doing discussions where we ask people first to meditate on, you know, we may have some topic like friendship. Okay, what does it mean to be a friend? What values or qualities do you look in people to before making a establishing friendship with them? What do you do in order to become a good friend to other people, which most of the young people have never thought about?
Oh, yeah.
You know, how do I improve myself so I can be a good friend? They're always looking, oh, who's attractive to me?
Who's good friend to me?
Yeah. But this is, what do you do?
Yeah.
So we'll ask them to do short contemplation on those questions, and then we'll sit around in a circle, maybe 5, 7 people, keep it a small group. Everybody has to share from their own life.
Oh.
It's not theoretical. It's relating to their own life, how they feel about friendship, for example, or, you know, of the 4 non-virtues of speech, which one do you have more problem with and why? But so people have to talk about themselves. So in doing this, they are learning how to open up with people of their same age and talk personally about something that is really meaningful. Because so often young people, what are they talking about? The latest movie stars, the sports events, the classes, how do you get a job, where do you go on vacation? You know? So here we're getting them talking about things that are really meaningful in their lives that they may not always discuss with their friends. And we find this very effective, because then they go, oh, Buddha, you know, we're just using a common topic, yeah, and infuse it with some Buddhism, and they talk about their experience, and then, like if we have a discussion on anger, they may share their ideas, and then they'll look at the teacher and they'll say, well, what does Buddhism have to say about how to deal with anger? And then you give them a teaching about anger. Yeah, and all the different methods to calm the mind down. Yeah, so this kind of approach, I think, really appeals to the young people.
So you kind of try to make a relationship, close relationship with their daily lives.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's very good.
If you start out with a young person, there's Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and you do prostrations by putting your hands together, and then you go like this. And these people know nothing about Buddhism. It's not going to work.
They are going to run out.
Yes, exactly. If you talk about something related to their life, you know, and then they're staying at the monastery, they see us prostrating, they see us chanting, then they say, oh, well, tell us about that. And they become curious about it, and then you can teach those kinds of things.
That's very good idea. Yeah, that's very good.
So, like you said, Shiravasti was the place in India where the Buddha taught for 25 rainy seasons. The Varsa was held there. And there were both male and female monasteries in Shiravasti. So because I wanted to do something with male and female, I thought, that embodies it, because the teacher, the Buddha, spoke many of the sutras there. I thought, that embodies what we want to do. So, but I had some other names, and so I wrote them in a list. I turned them into His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and he was the one who selected Shiravasti Abbey.
I see.